Welcome back to the IdahoSports.com State Baseball Tournament Preview Special. Brandon Baney joined now by our two-way State Baseball Tournament broadcasters. Paul Kingsbury, of course, the director of witty banter at IdahoSports.com as well, and a pretty talented guy in his own right, Bert Sahlberg. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us, and Bert especially. This is going to be exciting.
It is. I'm really looking forward to this. I'm just hoping the weather that's happening outside right now doesn't happen this weekend. I'm also taking part in a NAI tournament here in Lewiston. We were in a lightning delay just a minute ago. So hopefully that passes through. Great weather, and we can just have fun at the tournament.
You know, Bert, I'm going to break in real quick. Bert, could you give yourself a quick bio to all the fans that are watching? Because this is going to be your first foray into, working with Idaho sports. I've known you a long time over email. I don't think you and I have actually met face to face, but we've known each other for 10 plus years, right?
Yeah. So I have a really strong sports background. I was a sports writer for a long time at the Lewiston Tribune. And then I spent a year about 88, 89 down at the Idaho Statesman, and then came back as sports editor of the Lewiston Tribune until about 2003. And then joined Lewis Clark State College. I'm their public information officer, so I write their press releases. It's kind of nice to get paid. Journalism, as you guys know, media is, sometimes. So doing that, but I do some side gigs. I do some color commentary for Lewis Clark State College basketball, some fill in for baseball, some SWX, a TV station out of Spokane. I'll do some games for them. So just kind of a hand in a little bit of everything, just keeping the sports alive. And so I'm just a sports nut that loves to be participating in things like this.
He fits right in around here, doesn't he, Brandon?
Yes. On a personal note, Bert, I am calling the 1A state tournament at Church Field in Lewiston, and I've been diving into the Lewiston Tribune archives this week to research the history, because the White Pine League just has dominated this thing. The byline pretty regularly, written by Bert Sahlberg. And so it's been a pleasure reading all of your work from the late 90s and the early 2000s.
Well, thanks. But this gray hair tells you that that's a long time ago.
Yeah. For sure. Well, let's go ahead, Paul.
No, go ahead. No,
okay.
Paul, back to you.
I was going to say, let's dive into this 2A state tournament bracket. These games will be held at Clearwater Field in Orofino, one of, if not the most scenic ballparks in the state of Idaho. And this is a bracket that is all predetermined. There's no Max Preps rankings. And so we were able to plug teams in as they clinched throughout. Your district champions, Firth won District 6. They will play the runner-up from District 3, Nampa Christian. It's weird to see Nampa Christian in a B role, a B seed, not an A seed. Orofino won District 1 and 2 up north. They'll play Declo, the champions from District 4. Marcy won District 3 this year. They'll take on Bear Lake, the second place team from District 5, and one of just two teams overall that has the chance to complete the sweep. Bear Lake won football and boys basketball championships earlier this year. Can they do in baseball? We'll wait and see. And then Malad, the champion from District 5, taking on Kellogg, the second place team from up north. Paul, when you look at this bracket, what is the first thing that jumps out to you?
The first thing that jumps out is there's 3 returning teams from last year, and it's interesting because 2A is one of those classifications where you see a lot of the same teams in it every year. You get the Grangevilles in it every year. You get the Malads and New Plymouth even. And like you mentioned, seeing Nampa Christian not as the, quote favorite coming in. It's strange, but I mean, shoot, they won 12 state championships under Mark Harris, who retired last year. Talk about big shoes to fill coming in as a new head coach. Jake Allen was a pitching coach before. And guess what? He brought him back. Bert sent me some info today. They lost 12 seniors to graduation. So yeah, it's another one of those, we just reload, they don't rebuild, they reload. And that's one thing Nampa Christian did. But, on that bracket, if we can pull that back up again, you look at the top and the bottom, and you've really got the haves and the have-nots this year, where you're looking at the top of the bracket, you could have the championship and the semis, which is interesting because this bracket is set up how most state tournament brackets were set up for the last 30 years, right? And they changed that slowly over the last 3, 4, 5 years to what we're seeing now, where it's seeded after the tournament's done, or after the district tournaments are done. And one of the riding forces for that was to kind of eliminate that semifinal championship. And here is 2A, the one sticking to the old way, and we might have that Orofino Firth, what could be a championship game in the semis as well. So that's definitely one thing I'm looking at. The bottom of the bracket, Kellogg. Kellogg's back in it for, I don't even know. Bert might know this. I couldn't find Kellogg being in a state tournament. They were 3A before this for years and years and years. So having them back, and they came on hot late. They did not have a great season. They came on late and did well in districts and pulled themselves in. So there's a lot of good storylines on this bracket, but I think a big one is how much talent there is at the top, and the bottom. They're going to have to really struggle to come home with trophies on Saturday.
Yeah, Kellogg almost got to state last year. They lost in a state play-in game at the 3A level. And Paul, you mentioned potential championship matchup in the semifinals. There is a literal championship matchup in the first round. Firth and Nampa Christian. They played for the championship last year, right. Bert. So yes, Bert, when you look at this bracket, what's the first thing that jumps out to you?
Well, the same thing that jumped out to Paul is that I kind of combined records, and so the top half of the bracket is 68-18 overall for a 790 winning percentage. The bottom half of the bracket is 46-43. Just barely above 500. So when you start talking about those top 4 teams, they are all solid teams. And as you mentioned, the first game of the tournament is a rematch of last year's championship game. Mm-hmm. However, I don't think you can overlook Marsing because they beat Nampa Christian twice this season, and that's why they're the district champions. The other thing I look at is both Nampa Christian and Marsing. District 3 has dominated this tournament. They've won the last 7 state titles. The last non-District 3 team to win was Orofino on their home field in 2014. So really looking forward to those first round games, especially that first game, a rematch of the championship game.
Yeah, friendly reminder, all my 2A baseball fans that are watching this, you want to give your favorite team, your favorite player a shout out. You want to ask one of us a question, and with two media icons like Paul Kingsbury and Bert, you should definitely ask questions because these are 2 great resources. You could throw them in the comments and we'll throw them up on the screen. Okay, so let's put that bracket back up here, and I'll ask both of you this question, and I'll go with Bert first. Bert, who is the team you like coming out of that bottom half of the bracket?
Well, it's tough to say because I have not seen any of these teams play, and so it's really tough for me to really pick one. On paper, it looks like Marsing would be the one, but I don't think you can count out Malad. And then Kellogg, I do know Kellogg, even though they're 12-14 on the season, they have some athletes, and it sounds like Bear Lake does as well. If you win football and basketball, you have some athletes on your teams. So you just peak at the right time, get the right pitcher in the right situation. You just never know. But I would think Marsing would be the team to beat in the bottom half. But any given day, you just wait and see what happens.
Paul, who do you like on the bottom half?
Well, as a former, 2A WIC guy, I can't root for Marsing. It's just, I'm not allowed. They were in the same conference. We played against them all the time. But it's great to see them back. I do want to say, they haven't been in since, 6-7 years. So it's great to see them back. But I'm going to have to agree. Bear Lake or Malad, 3rd place last year. They'd love to get over that hump and get there. And Bear Lake, Logan mentioned in the last preview show, they could get the trifecta. They have to have athletes, especially in a 2A school, right? Your athletes are your athletes. It's not like a 5A school where you've got your stud football players, you've got your stud basketball and your stud baseball. Nope. More. And that, broadcasting high school sports, you see the same names. Every sports season, which makes it really easy for us, but you see those same names. And so when you come into a state tournament with a Bear Lake, you immediately think, what? I just broadcast a 2A state basketball tournament. They were really good. Yeah, I'm going to go with them, even though it's a completely different sport. They've really got the athletes. So, I'm going to put a Bear Lake, to answer your question, a Bear Lake 1A, and then a Malad 1AB, basically. If that's allowed, we let me do that?
Yeah, that's totally fine. That's right. Bear Lake, I think in football and in basketball, it's kind of the same thing. They came in as a lower seeded team and proved in tight games, close games, they have that winning formula. So It'll be very interesting to see how this bracket shakes out. Now, the more difficult question. Let's put that bracket back up there.
Okay.
Who comes out of the top, Bert? This could be equally tricky.
Glad you asked him first.
Yeah, that is a tough one. You kind of wonder about Declo with, I saw their season record as being 11-4. And so they haven't had a lot of games like the rest of them. They're a good 10 games behind everyone else. So you wonder, how does that affect you? Did you, what's the reason that you didn't get that many games in? I would assume weather, but also when you don't have that competition, how much does it hurt you? So I'm worried about them. Let's put it that way. Firth with the record at 20-3, they look good. But Nampa Christian, when you win 6 of 7 state titles, you've been there before, and that experience and that being able to get over those first game butterflies kind of things, that's really telling. So to me, I like Nampa Christian and Orofino to advance. Just Orofino playing at home, that's a comfort zone, and just Nampa Christian just because they've been there. But when you start talking aces going on the mound, and you've got to, I think the strategy in this, I think you have to throw your aces the first game, because these are 2 tough games. And, sometimes you look at brackets and you go, can we save our top guy? And you were talking about that a lot in the 3A. Can we save our top guy for the second game kind of things? I don't think you can in this situation. I think you got to go with what got you there and just do everything you can to get to the next round. So it'll be a really good first game, really good first matchup.
Yeah, it's going to be 0-60 immediately in this tournament. There is no easing your way into play here.
No.
Paul, who do you like from the top of the bracket?
We're in the same spot, and I think all the Declo fans are like, hey, what about us? I get it. You're the number 1 team that came out. It's a 2-team conference. Wendell came out last year, Declo this year. It goes back and forth in baseball, usually between those 2 teams. But yeah, Orofino, they've gone 2 in barbecue so many years. I mean, besides having talent, they've got a chip on their shoulder. They're playing at home. They haven't brought that blue trophy back for a little while. And Firth, they're good. Firth is very, very, very good, but it does come down to the players you've got. And, that player to watch that we're going to look at, Silas, he's a junior, 0.61 ERA, 3-0 for Orofino. They come out, throw him first. Do they need to that first day? That's another thing the coaches have to look at is who they're playing. Yeah, we have to get out, but do we need to throw our ace the first day? Do we need to? Can we bring him in the, 3rd inning if we need to? Because that whole pitch count rules, there's so much to think about these days. Back in the day, you could just throw them until their arm was a noodle and it was fine. Give them a good cortisone shot. They'll be all right in the morning. But now you can't do that. So there's so many things to look at. But coming out, gosh, I just want to say, I say Firth and then I go, but Orofino. So I'd like to see Orofino do it because they're the home team. But I would not be shocked for Firth to do it.
Yeah, you talked about Silas Naranjo for Orofino, great pitcher. They've also got Drew Hanna, who, threw like a no-hitter earlier this year. So, they do have 2 guys they can line up. Firth has so much speed on the base paths. I'm really interested to see how Firth's running game disrupts these ace pitchers that Firth will be going against as well. And then, based upon some of the old archives I was reading that Bert wrote at the Lewiston Tribune, it seems like back in the day, like in the 90s at least, the rule was like 7 innings in the tournament. That was all you got. Does that sound right, Bert?
Yes, that sounds right. Yeah, you got 7 innings and how you spread it out. Yeah, and pitch count kind of just changes it a little bit, but it's still the same philosophy. Do you go with your top ace in the first game or not? And you really do. You look at matchups. The thing that is probably tough for some of these coaches is, if you're from Northern Idaho and you're playing a Southern Idaho team, what's the scouting report? Who's giving up the scouting report to you? You've all got friends in the coaching world, and do they hit a left-hander better? Do they hit a right-hander better? Do they hit fastballs? Do they hit, is it better to throw a junk ball pitcher against somebody? And sometimes you just have to go with your gut and go, this is we have to win that first game, so we've got to go with our ace.
Yeah. And I will say, in defense of Declo, Wendell did beat Nampa Christian twice this year. A Wendell kid threw a no-hitter against Nampa Christian, and then Declo turned around and cleaned up Wendell in the district pretty consistently. So I will say Declo as well has an outside shot for sure. That's what makes this tournament, I think, the most exciting. When you look at 5A through 1A, I think the 2A is the one that's the most wide open for sure. Let's take a look at our 2A players to watch. We picked one from each school, sort of a jumping off point. Hey, there's a familiar name at the top, Bryson Crane from Bear Lake. I think he was the MVP in football, MVP in state basketball as well. Will Gerard from Declo, great multi-sport athlete. Alex Vasquez from Firth. I had to pick one of the Vasquezes. I went with Alex. Logan Smith for Kellogg is only a sophomore, but he just seems to come up with clutch hit after clutch hit for the Wildcats. Gaden Combs from Malad, another young guy. JT Shade from Marcine. Braden Schaefer has been a great pitcher for Nampa Christian this year as well. And then, of course, Silas Naranjo that we just talked about from Orofino. Bert, which player are you most excited to watch on that list?
I think for me, it's the Vasquez kid. I think I'm really interested to see what he's like. I think he was a first team, if I remember correctly, he was a first team All-State selection last year. I'm really excited to see him. I'm also going to go off list with you here because
definitely.
There's a couple twins from Kellogg. Colby and Riley
Ripley.
And they're both preferred walk-ons to the University of Miami football team. And so these guys, I've seen these guys physically. I have not seen them on the field and stuff, but these guys are solid guys. I'm interested to see how athletic they are just on the baseball field and what that brings to the Kellogg team.
Yeah, I believe Kellogg was playing Grangeville for that second spot to state, and they were in a pickle late in the game. I think Grangeville had the tying runs on base, and they brought in, I believe it was Colby Luna, to close out the game on the mound for Kellogg and get the win there. And you're definitely right. The Luna twins you can put on there.
Selecting one. You can put a lot of players in there, but it's just the interesting thing is just I like pitchers. I mean, can pitchers? What are they going to be like in the tournament when the pressure's on in a big situation, big game? First game right out of the gate, you've got to come out and throw strikes right away. I mean, hopefully your defense is playing well behind you, but you've got to get ahead in counts, not give up those freebies and hit batters or a lot of walks and put yourself in a hole. Because then it feels like there's pressure on you and there's pressure on your defense to make plays. And so I'm really interested to see those guys come out and see who's ready to play and who's ready to throw strikes.
And I'm going to break in Brandon real quick. Colby, is their ace, and he comes in with a 0.58 ERA. Number 2 is Ripley with a 4.43, nothing in between. And so if they're going to come out with their ace Colby on Thursday, they really need to get Malad in a hole as early as possible to get Colby out of there, so they have him later on, because otherwise it's going to be pitching by a huge committee on games 2 and 3. So again, that pitching, not only where you do it, but your depth is so critical, and most of all so for Kellogg in this tournament.
Yeah, for sure. Paul, is there one guy on that players to watch list that you're excited to see? I mean, you've seen a lot of these guys in other sports, but
right. I'm seeing old friends. That's all I'm seeing here. That's all I'm seeing. No, Logan Smith, like you said, and for a couple of reasons that we didn't mention. So there's not a lot of heavy hitting in high school. In the 4A down, 3A down, you're not going to see a lot of balls fly over the wall, especially in Orofino. It's a deep field. And coming in, I counted 12 home runs for all the teams in the state tournament on the season. Kellogg's got 4, the most, all from Logan Smith. On the other teams, Orofino 1, Firth 1, Nampa Christian 0, Declo 2, Marcing 1, Bear Lake 3, Malad none. And then Logan Smith comes in with 4 home runs, 10 stolen bases. I mean, the guy, he's going to be fun to watch, not in just one position. It's going to be, in the field, at the plate. I'm really looking forward to watching Logan Smith, see what he can do.
Yep, and a young guy too, so you might be seeing him for multiple years if Kellogg can get on the roll. So, all right, well, gentlemen, thank you for hopping on and doing this. We are so excited to watch the 2A state baseball tournament again all weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday from Clearwater Field in Orofino. live on IdahoSports.com. We will take a break and come back with our last preview of the night, the 1As. That actually starts on Wednesday. That's why I'm on the road, because I got to get to Lewiston. So we will take a break and come back with that here on IdahoSports.com.